Fantasy Football Week 13. Start M. Sit M recommendations. Quarterbacks to start. C.J. Stroud. Texans vs. Jaguars. Stroud faces a Jaguars defense, allowing the most fantasy points to quarterbacks. With 345 yards and 2 touchdowns in their last matchup, he's poised for another big game. Anthony Richardson. Colts vs. Patriots. Richardson's rushing ability and a favorable matchup against a Patriots defense that has allowed multiple QB touchdowns in recent weeks make him a strong start. Baker Mayfield. Buccaneers vs. Panthers. Mayfield had a favorable matchup against Carolina, which allowed 21 quarterback touchdowns this season. His dual-threat capability boosts his value. Matthew Stafford. Rams vs. Saints. With Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua healthy, Stafford has been red-hot and faces a Saints defense vulnerable to big QB performances. Quarterbacks to sit. Brock Purdy. 49ers vs. Bills. Coming off an injury, Purdy faces a tough Bills defense with limited upside. Geno Smith. Seahawks vs. Jets. Smith leads the league in passing yards, but has struggled with consistency. The Jets' elite pass defense limits his fantasy value. Running backs to start. Bucky. Irving. Buccaneers vs. Panthers. Irving faces Carolina's league-worst rush defense. He's set for a high-yardage game with touchdown potential. Kyren Williams. Rams vs. Saints. Against a Saints defense allowing the 5th most points to RBs, Williams is a strong play with Rob Havenstein possibly returning. Ramondre Stevenson. Patriots vs. Colts. Indianapolis struggles against the run, making Stevenson a bounce-back candidate this week. Tony Pollard. Titans vs. Commanders. After a strong performance last week, Pollard faces a Commanders defense, allowing significant yardage and touchdowns to RBs. Running backs to sit. Javonte Williams. Broncos vs. Browns. Cleveland's tough rush defense makes Williams a risky start. Nick Chubb. Browns vs. Broncos. Despite a 2-touchdown performance last week, Denver's strong run defense limits Chubb's ceiling. Wide receivers to start. Tank Dell. Texans vs. Jaguars. Dell faces a defense struggling against WRs. With Nico Collins drawing attention, Dell should have a productive day. Ladd McConkey. Chargers vs. Falcons. Atlanta's defense allows the most points to WRs, making McConkey a must-start. George Pickens. Steelers vs. Bengals. Pickens thrives in divisional matchups, and the Bengals defense has been generous to opposing WRs. Wide receivers to sit. Jordan Addison. Vikings vs. Cardinals. Addison faces a tough Cardinals defense that limits WR production and may see fewer targets as Jefferson rebounds. Khalil Shakir. Bills vs. 49ers. Shakir's opportunities will likely decrease with other receivers returning against a strong 49ers defense. Tight ends to start. Hunter Henry. Patriots vs. Colts. Henry thrives in matchups against defenses vulnerable to tight ends, like Indianapolis. Pat Freiermuth. Steelers vs. Bengals. Freiermuth has a favorable history against Cincinnati and faces a defense allowing significant production to tight ends. Tight ends to sit. Dalton Kincaid. Bills vs. 49ers. San Francisco's strong defense and Kincaid's reduced role make him a risky play. Defenses to start. Minnesota Vikings vs. Cardinals. Kyler Murray's turnover struggles make Minnesota a top streaming option. Houston Texans vs. Jaguars. Jacksonville's offensive struggles position Houston for a solid defensive performance. Defenses to sit. Pittsburgh Steelers vs. Bengals. Cincinnati's high-powered offense poses a tough matchup for the Steelers. San Francisco 49ers vs. Bills. Buffalo's explosive offense and San Francisco's injury issues limit their upside.